I'm Robert, 67 years old, and I need to tell you something that's been eating at me for months now. While I was sitting at Thanksgiving dinner, struggling with my arthritic hands to cut through that damn turkey, my son, my own flesh and blood, was recording a video of me. He posted it on Facebook with the caption, "Look at this failure, he was always a beggar." My grandchildren laughed. They actually laughed at their grandfather struggling to eat. I got so angry I left right then and there, my hands shaking not just from the arthritis but from pure rage. The next day, my daughter-in-law had the audacity to write me a message asking, "Why can't I withdraw $2,000 from your account?" Without thinking twice, I exploded. But let me tell you how this story really ends, because what happened next changed everything. If you're watching this, hit that like button, subscribe for more real stories, and comment below where you're watching from, because this is a story every parent needs to hear. You want to know what really burns me up? For 15 years since my Sarah passed away, I've been bringing expensive wine to every family dinner. 15 years of stopping at the liquor store, spending money I could barely afford on a fixed income, picking out bottles that cost more than I spend on groceries in a week. I'd show up with gifts for the grandkids, flowers for my daughter-in-law, always trying to contribute something meaningful to these gatherings. I thought I was being a good father, a good grandfather. I thought I was showing respect for their home, gratitude for being included. But apparently, in their eyes, I was just some pathetic old man desperately trying to buy their love. That's what my son called it later, buying our tolerance. Those words still cut through me like a knife. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, every birthday party, I'd arrive with something in my hands and hope in my heart that maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time they'd actually seem happy to see me. Maybe this time my son wouldn't roll his eyes when I walked through the door. Maybe this time my daughter-in-law wouldn't check her phone the entire time I was talking. But they never were happy to see me, were they? I was just the obligation they had to endure. The burden they had to feed. My son would make jokes about my hearing, about how I repeated stories, about how I ate too slowly. He'd share these funny anecdotes with his friends right in front of me, like I was some senile old fool who couldn't understand what was happening. My grandchildren, God, this hurts to say, my grandchildren barely acknowledged I existed. When I'd try to ask them about school, about their friends, about their interests, they'd give me one-word answers and then immediately turn back to their phones. When I'd try to share stories about their father when he was their age, they'd actually groan and ask if they could be excused. I kept telling myself it was just the generation gap. Kids these days, right? They're all absorbed in their technology. But deep down, I knew the truth. Their parents had taught them that Grandpa Robert was someone to be tolerated, not loved. Someone to be endured, not respected. So there I was at Thanksgiving, my hands cramped up from the cold weather we'd been having, struggling to hold that knife steady enough to cut through the turkey. My arthritis has been getting worse every year, and some days I can barely button my shirt, let alone perform delicate knife work. But I was trying, damn it. I was trying so hard to just eat my dinner with dignity. And what does my son do? Instead of offering to help, instead of cutting the meat for his old man like any decent human being would do, he pulls out his phone and starts recording. He's sitting there, watching me struggle, watching me shake, watching me fight with that piece of meat, and he's filming it like it's the funniest thing he's ever seen. I could hear him snickering behind that phone. I could see his wife covering her mouth, trying not to laugh out loud. My grandchildren were watching too, and when the youngest one started giggling, something inside me just broke. These people, my family, were treating my physical limitations like entertainment. But the video, that cursed video, that's when I finally saw who my son really was. He posted it on Facebook. For all his friends, all our neighbors, all our relatives to see. Look at this failure, he was always a beggar. Those words are burned into my brain. My own son calling me a failure. My own son calling me a beggar. A beggar. Me. A man who worked 43 years at the same company, who never missed a day unless I was in the hospital, who put that ungrateful son of mine through college, who helped him buy his first house, who gave him every advantage I never had growing up. A beggar. I sat there staring at that post for I don't know how long, reading it over and over again, watching the likes and laughing emojis pile up from people I'd known for decades. Neighbors I'd helped move furniture. Relatives I'd lent money to. Co-workers I'd covered shifts for. They were all laughing at me. They were all clicking those little laughing faces at my humiliation. The comments were even worse. Poor old Robert, someone should teach him how to use a fork. At least he's not drooling yet. My dog eats neater than that. And my son, was replying to these comments, adding his own jokes, egging them on. Trust me, this is him on a good day. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up from that table, my legs shaking with rage and shame, and I walked out. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't thank them for dinner. I didn't kiss my grandchildren goodnight. I just left. I drove straight to my late wife's sister's house, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight I thought I might break it. Margaret, that's Sarah's sister, she took one look at my face and knew something was terribly wrong. She sat me down in her kitchen, made me a cup of coffee, and listened while I told her everything. And when I showed her that video, when I showed her those comments, the look of horror and disgust on her face told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't normal family teasing. This was abuse. I stayed at Margaret's that night, and the next morning, that's when the real betrayal revealed itself. I woke up to a text message from my daughter-in-law, "Why can't I withdraw $2,000 from your account?" Just like that. No, good morning, Dad. No, hope you're feeling better after last night. Just a demand for money. That joint account, I'd opened it years ago for emergencies. You know, in case something happened to me and they needed to access funds quickly. In case I was in the hospital and couldn't pay my bills. In case there was some family crisis and they needed help. It was supposed to be for genuine emergencies, and I'd explicitly told them that any withdrawals needed to be discussed with me first. But here was my daughter-in-law, demanding to know why she couldn't access my money like it was some kind of ATM machine she was entitled to use whenever she wanted. The casual entitlement in that message, the complete lack of respect for my wishes or my financial security, it made my blood boil. I called the bank immediately. I needed to know what had been happening with that account. And what I discovered made me sick to my stomach. They'd been draining it for months. Hundreds here, 500 there, 1,000 last month. Always amounts just small enough that the bank wouldn't flag them as suspicious, but together they added up to thousands of dollars. Thousands of my dollars, taken without my knowledge or consent. Money I'd saved from my pension, money I needed for my medications, money I was keeping aside in case I needed medical care or had to move to assisted living someday. They were stealing my security, my independence, my peace of mind. But that wasn't even the worst part. Oh no, it gets so much worse. I started going through my bank statements more carefully, and I found withdrawals I'd never authorized, deposits I'd never made, transactions that made no sense. So I went down to the bank in person and demanded to see everything. The bank manager, a nice young woman who'd helped me before, she could see how upset I was. She pulled up my complete account history, and what she showed me made me want to vomit right there in her office. My son had been forging my signature. For months, he'd been walking into that bank with documents that had my name signed to them, but I'd never signed anything. Loan applications. That's what they were. My son had been taking out loans using my house as collateral. My house. The house Sarah and I bought 40 years ago, the house we raised our children in, the house where we planned to grow old together. He'd been putting it up as security for loans I knew nothing about. The bank manager showed me the paperwork, and there was my signature, except it wasn't my signature. It was close, I'll give him that. He'd practiced. But I've been signing my name for 67 years, and I know what my signature looks like. These were forgeries, and not even very good ones. I asked to see the loan documents, and that's when the full scope of his betrayal became clear. He'd been telling people, telling the bank, telling loan officers, telling anyone who would listen, that I was losing my mind. That I was showing signs of dementia. That I was becoming incompetent and needed someone to manage my affairs. He'd been systematically destroying my reputation, questioning my mental capacity, spreading lies about my cognitive abilities, all so he could justify controlling my finances. He was setting up a narrative that would allow him to take over everything I owned while making it look like he was doing it for my own good. The rage I felt in that moment, I don't have words for it. My own son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the young man I'd walked down the aisle at his wedding, the father I'd supported through every challenge, he was planning to destroy my life for money. He was willing to steal my dignity, my independence, my home, all for money. But I wasn't done discovering the depths of his betrayal. Margaret had been keeping records, she told me that night when I went back to her house. She'd been documenting every interaction she'd witnessed between me and my son's family. She'd been writing down the cruel comments, the dismissive behavior, the way they treated me like I was an inconvenience. She showed me a notebook she'd been keeping for over 2 years. Page after page of incidents I'd forgotten or tried to forget. Times when my son mocked my appearance in front of others. Times when my daughter-in-law made cruel jokes about my age. Times when my grandchildren were encouraged to laugh at my expense. "I've been waiting for you to see it," Margaret told me. "I've been praying you'd finally realize what they were doing to you. Sarah would be heartbroken if she could see how they're treating you." That hit me harder than anything else. My Sarah, my beautiful, kind, loving wife, she'd be devastated to see what our son had become. She'd be ashamed of the man we'd raised. She'd be furious at the way her grandchildren were being taught to treat their elder with contempt. Margaret wasn't the only one who'd been watching. My brother Frank called me the next day. Somehow word had gotten out about what happened at Thanksgiving, and Frank was furious. He told me he'd been biting his tongue for years, watching my son treat me like garbage, hoping I'd stand up for myself. "Bobby," he said, "he's the only one who still calls me Bobby. That boy has been walking all over you since Sarah died, and I'm tired of watching it. He's turned into a selfish, greedy bully, and it's time someone called him on it." Frank told me stories I'd never heard. Times when my son had bad-mouthed me to other family members. Times when he'd made cruel jokes about my loneliness after Sarah passed. Times when he'd complained about having to deal with the old man at family gatherings. Even my old friend Pete from work reached out. Pete told me that my son had been coming around the factory, telling people I was getting senile and asking if anyone had noticed me acting strange. He'd been trying to build a case for my incompetence by getting my former co-workers to question my mental state. The humiliation of knowing that my son had been discussing my supposed mental decline with people I'd worked alongside for decades, it was almost unbearable. These were men who'd respected me, who'd looked up to me as a mentor, who'd trusted me with their problems and their secrets. And my son was trying to turn them against me by painting me as a confused old man. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. My daughter-in-law, it turns out, isn't quite as smart as she thinks she is. When she realized that the financial schemes could be traced back to her too, that she could be charged as an accessory to elder abuse and fraud, she started singing like a canary. She called Margaret's house crying, begging to talk to me. She wanted to explain everything and make it right. But when I finally agreed to speak with her, what came out wasn't remorse, it was panic. She was scared that if my son went down for this, she'd go down with him. I told him this was a bad idea, she sobbed into the phone. I told him you'd figure it out eventually. I told him we should just ask you for help instead of taking the money. But he said you'd never understand, that you were too selfish to help us when we really needed it. Selfish. Me. The man who'd given them thousands of dollars over the years for car repairs, house improvements, their children's expenses. The man who'd babysat my grandchildren for free every weekend when they were little. The man who'd helped them move 3 times, painted their kitchen, fixed their plumbing. Selfish. She kept crying and trying to blame everything on my son, but I wasn't buying it. She'd been just as involved in spending my money as he was. She'd been just as cruel in her treatment of me. She'd been just as eager to laugh at my expense and treat me like a burden. I want a divorce, she wailed. I can't be married to someone who would steal from his own father. I had no idea how bad it had gotten. Please, Dad, you have to help me. I need a good lawyer, and I need somewhere to stay with the kids. The audacity of it took my breath away. Here was a woman who'd been complicit in stealing my money, who'd been emotionally abusing me for years, who'd taught my grandchildren to disrespect me, and she wanted me to help her. She wanted me to pay for her divorce lawyer and provide her with housing after what she'd done to me. You're not my daughter, I told her, my voice as cold as I could make it. You never were. You're the woman who married my son and turned him into a thief. You're the woman who taught my grandchildren to laugh at their grandfather. You made your choices, and now you can live with the consequences. The next few days were a whirlwind of action. Margaret helped me find a lawyer who specialized in elder abuse cases. We gathered all the evidence. The forged signatures, the unauthorized withdrawals, the loan documents I'd never seen. We had Margaret's notebook, Frank's testimony, Pete's account of my son's attempts to question my mental capacity. I removed my son from every account, every legal document, every piece of paperwork that had his name on it. I changed my will, leaving everything to charities that help seniors and to Margaret's family, people who'd actually shown me love and respect. I reported the elder abuse to the authorities and filed charges for fraud and forgery. The hardest part was moving out of the house Sarah and I had shared. But I couldn't stay there knowing my son had been planning to steal it from me. Margaret invited me to stay with her family, and for the first time in years, I felt welcome in someone's home. Margaret's children, my nieces and nephews by marriage, they treated me like family should. They asked about my day, listened to my stories, included me in their conversations. They helped me with tasks I struggled with because of my arthritis, but they did it with kindness and respect, not mockery and humiliation. It was such a stark contrast to how my own family had been treating me. These people barely knew me, yet they showed me more consideration in 1 week than my son had shown me in years. They made me realize that the problem wasn't my age or my limitations, the problem was that I'd been accepting abuse and calling it love. When my son finally realized what was happening, when he discovered that his access to my accounts had been cut off and the authorities were investigating him, he showed up at Margaret's house in a panic. He was begging, literally begging, claiming that everything had been just a joke and that I was overreacting. Dad, come on, he pleaded through Margaret's front door. You know I was just kidding around with that video. You know I didn't mean anything by it. We're family. We can work this out. But it wasn't just a joke, was it? The stolen money wasn't a joke. The forged signatures weren't a joke. The years of emotional abuse weren't a joke. The systematic campaign to destroy my reputation wasn't a joke. This was deliberate, calculated cruelty designed to steal my dignity and my security. I told him through the door that if he wanted any chance of a relationship with me going forward, he'd need to do several things. First, he'd need to make full restitution for every penny he'd stolen. Second, he'd need to publicly apologize for the video and the lies he'd spread about my mental capacity. Third, any future contact with my grandchildren would have to be supervised, because I couldn't trust him not to continue poisoning them against me. He refused every condition. He actually had the nerve to say that I was being unreasonable and vindictive. He said I was trying to destroy his family over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. As if systematically stealing from your elderly father could be chalked up to a simple miscommunication. The legal process moved faster than I expected. The evidence was overwhelming, bank records don't lie, and handwriting experts confirmed that the signatures were forgeries. My son lost his job when the background check for his security clearance revealed the elder abuse investigation. His wife filed for divorce, just as she threatened, but she didn't get the clean separation she was hoping for. You see, she'd been signing some of those forged documents too. She'd been just as involved in the financial scheme as he was. The court didn't buy her Innocent Victim Act any more than I had. She ended up facing charges right alongside him. The most satisfying part wasn't seeing them face legal consequences, though that was gratifying. The most satisfying part was realizing that I'd been right to trust my instincts. For years, I'd been telling myself that I was being too sensitive, that I was misinterpreting their behavior, that I should be grateful for any family contact at all. But I wasn't being too sensitive. They really were treating me terribly. I wasn't misinterpreting their cruelty, they really were mocking me, stealing from me, planning to destroy my independence. My instincts had been correct all along, but I'd been gaslighting myself into accepting unacceptable treatment. Living with Margaret's family has shown me what healthy family relationships look like. When I struggle with something because of my arthritis, they help me without making me feel ashamed. When I repeat a story I've told before, they listen politely or gently redirect the conversation without making me feel stupid. When I need assistance with technology or paperwork, they explain things patiently without treating me like I'm incompetent. This is how my son should have been treating me all along. This is how children should treat their aging parents, with love, respect, and patience. Not with mockery, theft, and cruelty. I've started volunteering at a local senior center, helping other elderly people recognize the signs of financial abuse. You'd be amazed how common this is. How many elderly parents are being systematically robbed by their own children? How many seniors are being emotionally abused by family members who see them as burdens rather than blessings? The stories I hear break my heart. Elderly people having their Social Security checks stolen. Seniors being forced to sign over their houses. Old folks being threatened with nursing homes if they don't hand over their savings. Children who see their aging parents as nothing more than ATM machines to be drained and discarded. But I also see the strength these seniors have when they finally stand up for themselves. I see the relief on their faces when they realize they don't have to accept abuse just because it's coming from family. I see the peace that comes from choosing dignity over false family harmony. That's what I found, peace. For the first time since Sarah died, I sleep well at night. I don't wake up wondering what cruel comment my son will make at the next family gathering. I don't stress about whether my grandchildren will acknowledge my presence. I don't worry about unexpected demands for money or surprise withdrawals from my accounts. My money is secure. My house is protected. My reputation has been restored. Most importantly, my self-respect has been rebuilt. I'm not the failure my son claimed I was. I'm not the beggar he painted me as. I'm a man who worked hard his entire life, who loved his family deeply, and who deserved better treatment than I was receiving. The truth is, my son saw my generosity as weakness. Every gift I brought, every favor I did, every kindness I showed, he interpreted it as desperation. He thought I was so afraid of losing my family that I'd accept any treatment, tolerate any abuse, overlook any betrayal. He was wrong. I wasn't being generous because I was weak. I was being generous because that's who I am. That's who Sarah and I raised him to be, though clearly that lesson didn't take. I wasn't bringing gifts because I was begging for love, I was bringing gifts because I wanted to show love. But love has to be reciprocal to be healthy. Respect has to go both ways. And I finally realized that what I was giving wasn't being returned. I was pouring my heart, my energy, and my resources into a relationship that was completely one-sided. My grandchildren still don't understand what happened. They've been told some version of events that paints me as the villain, I'm sure. They probably think Grandpa Robert just went crazy and turned mean for no reason. Someday, when they're older, maybe they'll ask questions and learn the truth. Maybe they'll realize that their father taught them to laugh at elderly people, to disrespect their elders, to treat generosity with contempt. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll grow up thinking that what they witnessed was normal family behavior. Maybe they'll treat their own aging parents the way they were taught to treat me. That thought makes me incredibly sad, but it's not my responsibility to fix anymore. I did my part. I was the father I was supposed to be. I was the grandfather I wanted to be. If my son chose to interpret that as weakness and exploitation, that's his failing, not mine. If my daughter-in-law chose to see me as a resource to be depleted rather than a person to be respected, that's her character flaw, not mine. The people who truly love me, Margaret's family, my brother Frank, my old friends, they never saw me as a failure or a beggar. They saw me as Robert, a man who'd lived a full life, who'd loved deeply, who'd worked hard, who'd earned respect and dignity in his golden years. These are the people I choose to spend my time with now. These are the people who deserve my generosity, my attention, my affection. These are the people who understand that aging is not something to be mocked, that physical limitations are not character flaws, that needing help sometimes is not cause for shame. My son thought I was old and helpless. He thought I was too frail, too confused, too desperate for family connection to fight back when he stole from me and humiliated me. He thought he could gradually strip away my dignity, my independence, and my security while I passively accepted it all. He was wrong about that too. I may be 67 years old. I may have arthritis. I may need reading glasses and hearing aids. I may move more slowly than I used to, and I may repeat myself sometimes. But I'm not helpless. I'm not weak. And I'm certainly not defeated. Turns out, I still had some fight left in me. More fight than my son bargained for. More fight than he thought possible from this pathetic old man he'd been mocking and robbing. And you know what? It feels good to fight back. It feels good to stand up for myself. It feels good to choose dignity over false peace. It feels good to surround myself with people who see my worth instead of people who see my weaknesses. This is my message to any older person watching this who recognizes their own story in mine: you are not too old to demand respect. You are not too frail to protect yourself. You are not too desperate for family contact to accept abuse. You deserve better, and it's never too late to fight for better. Don't let anyone, not even your own children, convince you that mistreatment is love. Don't let anyone steal your dignity in the name of family harmony. Don't let anyone rob you blind while telling you it's for your own good. You have value. You have worth. You have rights. And you have more strength than you think. My name is Robert, I'm 67 years old, and I refuse to be anyone's victim, especially my own son's. They thought they could break me down and cash me out. Instead, I broke free and found my voice. And if you're in a similar situation, I hope my story helps you find yours too.